What is good, Spuds? This is your man Jesse White Deer, and you are listening to another episode of the Needless Potatoes Podcast. How's your Friday going? How's your Saturday going? Thank you so much for joining us. We have the power duo of the Oklahoma City comedy scene. We have, wait for it, we have Brandon Roberts and Zach Collins, everybody. Brandon Roberts, Zach Collins. And them and I sit down and we talk about current issues, we talk about jokes, talk about this, we talk about that. And and I implore you to stick around for all of it because it is amazing. It is some just A-plus talk. If we're out there grading talk and conversations, this is an A-plus. So, and I was so honored to be joined by these guys. I know that both of them keep busy, so it was great of them to sit down and talk with me. No more left to say. Oh, wait, before I forget, check out Zach Collins' novel on Amazon. It is under James Curtis, and it is called God's Country Dirty Bomb. That's God's Country Dirty Bomb. $3 over there on Amazon. Download it, read it, shoot him a message, let him know what you think. God's Country Dirty Bomb under James Curtis, and Zach Collins is the brains behind that. So definitely check that out. $3, you have it. Share with a friend. But that's about it for me, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. You guys have a great weekend. You have a great day. You have a great life. And we'll see you next time, and probably the time after that. No, just kidding. We will. Bye-bye. Hello, Spuds and Spuds alike. This is your man, Jesse White Deer of the Needless Potatoes Podcast. I am sitting in studio, the Brandon Roberts studio, with the aforementioned Brandon Roberts and his buddy, Zach Collins. I'll let you guys introduce yourself and say one fact about yourself.
Hey, it's your house. You go first. Yeah, man. He really put us on the spot with that.
You got to speak up a little bit, too.
Okay, I'll speak up. He put us on the spot with that one. My name is Brandon Roberts, and we're here in my new office that me and my friends rented to play video games in. So that's my fact.
My name is Zach Collins, and I wrote a novel that no one ever read, so that's a thing.
Well, all right. I have not wrote a novel that no one's ever read. What about you, Brandon Roberts?
I barely write more than my name, so.
Okay.
Definitely not.
It was in the last half.
Is it with a cute backwards R?
No, it's pretty ugly forwards R.
Ugly forwards R. Okay. So that brings me to my next question. You guys have done stand-up comedy in the past. Unfortunately, some of that stuff is on hiatus. For you guys, for two funny people, how do you use that creativity in your downtime? Are you working on jokes? You're working on a routine? Brandon, I know that you said you played video games. Zach, you wrote a novel that no one read. What fuels that creative outlet for either of you guys? And we'll start with you, Zach.
Well, to answer your first question, during this downtime, I've not stopped writing. It's not been comprehensive by any means, but it's very much so been a continuation of kind of my process, which is basically something funny happens. I pull out my phone and go, "Hey Siri, take a note." And then later, whenever I'm in a more kind of refined state of mind, I can kind of start piecing that together. So I've not stopped doing that. I've got a phone full of notes, but what kind of fuels the creativity is just, for me at least, just kind of belonging to just be really me. We're all adults. We all have jobs that we have to be very conscientious about the way we are, the way we present ourselves, the words that we use. And for me, that's always been an outlet, whether it's writing jokes, doing stand-up, writing, a book or whatever that is a way for me to kind of manifest what I'm actually thinking and feeling. I don't have to be conscientious about a coworker, taking what I say the wrong direction or anything like that. I can just kind of let my guard down and kind of let those ideas flow freely.
Very cool. So you're not tripped up on trivial things. You're not thinking about like, oh well, so and so made this remark, and then that kind of hangs with you. You're more able to just let that creative side just run wild.
Yeah, it's kind of like turning the filter off. I mean, we all, to an extent, still express ourselves in our everyday interactions with people, our coworkers, our families, and people like that, those relationships that we have. But for me, the ability to create something that wasn't there before, whether it's good or not, it's a way for me to kind of like think that out. I can empty my head of that topic because I've already dealt with it, and now I can kind of play with other ideas.
Very cool. What about you, Mr. Roberts?
Man, like you said, I'm writing some more jokes, trying to come up with a whole new set. Because what I've been running with is time to switch it up. So I've got a joke about if Catholicism started in the hood that I'm pretty happy with. I feel like it's in a good place. So I can't wait to break that one out on stage and see what happens. But, for me, the creative process is just throw something out there and see if it sticks. I'll say something, I kind of put the joke premise out in front of my coworkers, and if they think it's funny, I'll take it and refine it for like an audience or something. So that's basically it for me. I'm real simple. I also have a phone full of notes, though. It's pretty disgusting.
Right. So it really sounds like both of you guys the ideas never stop. You always have an idea. You're always writing. You're always working at that routine in your head. For you guys, and this is a question I want to bring up. What kind of material, what kind of joke is you try to stay away from? Like what kind of joke whenever you have an idea, is there a part of your mind that says, maybe I should ease off about that, or maybe not that one?
Well, for me, because I'm more of a clean comic, if I wouldn't say it in front of my mother, I'm not gonna say it on stage. Like I don't curse or like I try not to tell like super dirty jokes, but if my mom would be angry at me, it's not gonna go on stage. But that's just my thing personally. So it is what it is.
I think I'm interested by this because I'm interested in clean comedy. Just because I'm not a clean comic at all. What's funny is like you use your mother as like a measuring stick.
Yeah.
My mom like shows up and she laughs at my stupid dick jokes or whatever it is that I'm doing. But I'm curious because I know you fairly well. I know that you're a man of principle. I've never heard you curse, and that's you know in my mind it shows kind of a strength of character that these are your principles and you stick to them. So I am curious, like whenever you specifically are thinking of material or anything like that, does it ever start in a dark place or kind of a dirty place, and then kind of is it something you can polish into something that you can use, or does it just come naturally to you in the state that you put it out there?
I think because I've basically been like this for so long that my jokes don't even start in like a dirty place or like a use of a lot of cuss words and I have to switch them out or anything. It doesn't it starts kind of clean and stays clean. Um, I mean I might make like an abuse joke, but like nothing like a sexual abuse joke, like beat your kids, but don't touch them inappropriately, like that kind of thing. But
The way the Lord intended.
hey,
Yeah, all right. Well, all right. And what is your thoughts on people who kind of use that shock comedy? And you know it's shock comedy.
yeah.
I don't think I've been accused of using shock comedy, but to be fair, she was 90, and uh, that's legitimate for anyone who's listening. Um, I don't think I think whenever you strip all the labels off of it, comedy has to be funny. So there have been times, the first time I ever watched Jim Jeffries stand up, he goes on a whole rant about pandas and Christianity, and like it's one of those things where you feel bad, but you still laugh.
Mhm.
So at the end, at the end of the day, it's comedy if someone finds it funny and they laugh
Right.
at it, whether it's shock comedy or whatever. Shock comedy doesn't really like interest me, but at the same time, there's a market for it. I mean, it's. I think it's a legitimate thing because people still listen to it. People still laugh at it, and people still pay to see it.
Brandon?
Man, to me, like I feel like shock comedy, like you said, does have its place in the whole comedy realm, but it's not necessarily for me because it's a hard art to do, and if you don't do it right, it's just cringy and offensive.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think you have to be. There's a fine line you have to walk with that, and a lot of people can't walk that line.
Yeah. For me, that line is it funny?
Yeah.
Because there are very offensive comics out there. If you've ever watched anything by Gilbert Gottfried, like, I know he was, the voice in Aladdin, but at the same time, like, whenever you get him away from the movies he's been in, the way that people might think of him, he's a very different person. Same thing goes with like Bob Saget, the dad from Full House. Like, those are two of the filthiest comics I've ever listened to. But I mean, they're very successful. I mean, the reason why they're successful is because they have a following, because there's merit to what they're doing. So even if that's not something that, interests you as a person, like there's still a market for it.
You can still respect it.
Exactly.
Right. No, and I think for me, I think kind of what you had said, Zach, is like if it's funny or if it lands, and I can appreciate the art of I don't want to say like shock comedy, but of a joke maybe I wouldn't find funny. So just like there's music or there's movies that I don't like, I can appreciate the art of it or the execution. However, like for me, like I'm not big on like rape jokes. You know what I mean? It's just not to me. It's just not funny, and I mean, or if you're, I think Kevin Hart had said something that if his son was gay, he'd beat him or whatever. And I mean,
T.Y.
yeah,
Hughley had a very similar joke.
yeah, exactly. So
What he said was, if my son came out as gay, I wouldn't call a doctor. I would call a prostitute and send one in every hour on the hour until he comes out and goes, I know what you're talking about, Dad.
yeah,
I mean, that's just, 5, 10 years ago that he made that joke, but it seems so aged now.
right. Well, sure, and there is that brand of comedy, unfortunately, where people you say an idea or you have an idea or you have a joke, and then it just, like you said, just doesn't age well. And I mean, I think that we live in this culture now where everything's held up under a magnifying glass.
Yep.
Everything, anything you say. So it's like if you say, "Hey, I was hanging out with so and so," or "I was doing this," or and it's so much people want to cancel you or they want to catch you in something, and these people belong to this kind of falsehood where they want to show you how much more tolerant they are than you, or much more tolerant than the crowd, or much more tolerant than and whoever. Like Tina Fey, for example, who's been a lifelong feminist. She was called out by several feminist movements who were saying, "Well, you're not feminist enough. You've done this, you've done A, B, C, D, but you're not feminist enough according to our kind of scale, I guess." And it's weird because you have those people, but then you also have people who are bucking against that who have to dig deep in the well and become even more offensive just for the sake of being offensive. And then you kind of have these two warring parties. So it's very interesting to look at from that aspect.
Right. Yeah, the whole cancel culture and the virtue signaling and all of that. I think,
White knighting as well.
yeah, I mean, just the social justice warrior movement, where people, they want to be on the right side so badly,
Mhm.
that they're willing to burn everything around them to show that they're on what they think is the right side. And a lot of times that comes at the cost of, you know, doxing people or canceling people, whatever that even really means. It's all it all boils down to virtue signaling and in a sense of like tribalism.
Mhm.
And I think that excuse me, Corona. I think that everything is a pendulum. The most offensive thing I've said so far, everybody just aghast. Um, but no, I really do think that everything exists kind of on a spectrum, and the pendulum moves in every direction. And we saw a couple of years ago where they started going through and canceling comedians based on their previous work. They tried to go after Kevin Hart, as you mentioned. But I have the philosophy of you have to look at things through the scope of its own era. So whenever George Carlin came out and did 7 dirty words you can't say on radio or television, that was absolutely groundbreaking. But there's not good luck finding a Netflix special now that doesn't use every single one of those words. So as edgy as it was at the time, if you listen to it now, it doesn't seem
Right.
as daring.
Yeah, those words don't seem as bad.
Yeah.
Like it's the material. It was shocking for the time, but it doesn't age well.
Exactly.
One, and it's something interesting you had said is I was sitting here thinking, Jim Norton was on W. Kamau Bell's show a few years ago. Are you good?
Yeah, great.
Okay. He got excited when I said W. Kamau Bell. That's what it was. No. Just kidding. No, but yeah. So W. Kamau Bell had a TV show. I don't know if he does anymore, but so this was from a few years ago. Jim Norton was under fire for making a few jokes, like few rape jokes. His comedy is very very sexually charged, very dark. It's funny, some of it, but some of it's like, okay. But anyways, so he had made a joke, and this woman had taken it very offensively. She had said, "Hey, that's sexist. You can't talk about that. How dare you joke about that?" So on and so forth. And what Jim Norton said something very interesting. He said, "Well, speech is universal. So either everything is okay or none of it's okay." But then he says, "Well, then who says none of it's okay? You say it's not okay for me to make a joke, about women, about, rape culture, whatever. And I can understand that comes from a place that somebody probably hurt you. And I apologize if I offended you on that level. But like, to me, like, no one's advocating for rape. But what I'm saying is like, hey, look how awful rape is. But I'm spinning it in a way that I think is funny, though a way that's entertaining." And she was just like, "Well, no, it's bad. You can't joke about it whatsoever." So I always have that idea in my head where either none of it's okay or it's all okay. Brandon, what do you think?
Ooh. I kind of feel what you're saying, but like I feel like there has to be boundaries. And like she said, I don't personally like rape jokes. I don't like dead baby jokes. That's my line. If you do a dead baby joke, I'm already kind of done with you. Um, I think that's kind of tasteless. But I understand what he's saying. Like if we have freedom of speech in this country, but I don't think you should abuse that and be a jerk and be offensive when you know something is offensive to somebody and you keep doing it.
Right. Well, and it's one of those things of and I was talking to a friend of mine who who is a huge Trump supporter. He's very conservative. We agree on like a lot of things, but that one thing is he's not he just won't change his mind about Trump. He agrees that Trump is right. On a lot of topics. But anyways, but one thing that we can both agree on is I said you technically you can say what you want on any form of media. You can say it on a podcast, social media, you can say it in person, you can say whatever you want. But there are repercussions to what you say. So if you work at for example, this I seen a post that people were sharing where a cashier at Walmart, she had made a joke to the effect of, "Oh man, it's the first, so I'm going to see all these Indians in here, buying all these groceries and stuff, and like I can't, but like I have to go home and like feed my kids with off the dollar menu or whatever it was." but she was saying, like, and then they basically get this, and and then, but I don't get any help with this, and why is it that white people don't get any help, so on and so forth. So she spun it in a way, as opposed to saying, okay, well, let me maybe understand this, or maybe let me look at it from this perspective. She spun it in a way of saying, she led with, well, these Indians, and then, or these people. I forgot what the phrase was. So people jumped on her. People are like, hey, you can't say that, you're racist, how dare you, so on and so forth. And then she came back later and said, like, well, I apologize, I didn't know, so on and so forth. And then, I think either she was like reprimanded or she was fired. And like, I can agree that people, you fuck up. Sometimes you say something out of anger, you don't mean, you mess up. But people have to realize that the things you put on social media, the things you say on any kind of platform, it stays around for, if not forever, for a long time. It never goes away. And it's like, people, if you said something in an interview that was derogatory 5 years ago and it's published, people can bring that up. Just like you had said with Kevin Hart, with DL Hughley. And I think that people deserve a chance to change and to say, hey, look, that was me. I didn't mean to say that. That was me a long time ago. I've transitioned beyond that. But at the same time, people have to use that caution. They have to, you have to think about what you're going to say. And I think the best course of action is whatever you're going to say it out loud or say it to a friend. And, I have some friends that will keep me in check. So if I'm upset or I'm mad about somebody and I want to call them out, I'll say it out loud, or I'll say it to a buddy of mine. If I don't knock this microphone off the table, but I'll say it to a buddy of mine. And I mean, I'll look back at it and I'll say, like, you know what? Fuck, it's not worth it. But, it's just one of those things of, we talked about earlier, is a lot of things are held under a microscope.
I will very respectfully take a counter stance on this, because I think that with the ability, one of the great things, you can say whatever you want about the leadership or the country as a whole, but if you look to like our neighbors to the north, Canadians, they get put on a tribunal for saying the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. Comedians a lot of times are, there was a comedian up there that made this joke that, there was this kid who was terminally sick with cancer, and he went out and he raised a bunch of money, and he went on this, to pay for his medical bills and stuff like that. Well, 3 years later, he's still terminally ill, but he's still alive. And the point of the joke was, is this kid going to die already? Which is not funny, but at the same time, I don't think you should have to go in front of a court to defend yourself and have the government actually like penalize you for that. So whenever I look at like those like parallels, I fully embrace like freedom of speech. And here's another reason why. Not only do I appreciate the ability to say whatever I want, I think everyone else should too, because here's the thing. What we've seen over the last couple of weeks is a bunch of people's true colors around what's happening in the nation right now. All you have to do is take a quick look at, a comment someone makes on Facebook Live, and immediately you can tell, oh, he and I are not the same. So, whenever people begin to self-censor, I think that things get really tricky really quick. And whenever I'm like exploring ideas for comedy, I explore ideas that I think are interesting. Politics is a hard thing to be funny about right now, but it doesn't interest me. So I just kind of stay away from it because I don't really like it. With that said, if I really wanted to dive into, race relations and politics and all these scary things that no one really wants to talk about, I feel like I should be able to explore those ideas in this very safe environment. Now, with that said, there's an old saying that you have the freedom to make any decision you want, but you do not have the freedom of the consequences of that decision.
Mhm.
So, if you do something racist and then everyone deletes you on Facebook, or they contact your employer and say, "Oh, by the way, did you know this guy was at the Klan rally?" Um, I mean, I think you have the ability to make those decisions, but you're still held accountable for your actions.
Right.
So it's not enough to just think about it. It's not enough to just, cover those ideas up, because whenever you do that, everybody kind of looks like, a Nazi on one side, because you've never actually seen a Nazi, you
Mhm.
know. So I think it's so important to, especially in this medium, not edit ourselves and not, try to push that through a filter. Like I said from the beginning, my entire reason for getting into comedy in the first place, well, at first I loved it, but I found how cathartic it was to actually explore these ideas and tell these stories that I couldn't before. I had a head full of ideas that I couldn't really explore. And I think that only by fully pursuing what interests you can you kind of work that out. And it's great for your mental health. Again, if you're racist, people are going to find out. But at the same time, we kind of need to know,
Right.
we kind of need to know how people actually feel about us. But whenever everyone's editing themselves, we don't really see who people are.
Right. No, I mean, and I understand that, and I can. It's very telling if you have to preference stuff you say on Facebook,
Yes.
or it's very telling if you say, well, I know that's going to sound racist, or this is going to sound, excuse me, this is going to sound bad, or this is what I think, and it's really unfortunate because those people that are racist or homophobic or sexist, they definitely, I will agree with you. They definitely do need to be held accountable, because speech like that is just, it's not good for anyone. It's not good for you. It's not good for me. If I was to say something racist about you, then there's something going on with me, and you need to correct that problem, so it doesn't happen in the future. Now, if you don't have that idea in your head that, like, well, there's nothing wrong with me, well, blacks are inferior or gay people are inferior, and that's just who I am, because you get that a lot. You get well, not saying you personally, but people get that a lot. Hopefully you don't, but hopefully you're not just like, well,
Sometimes it comes at me.
no, but
So I think the major point that I'm trying to get with this is that we talk about holding people accountable and stuff like that. Whereas I think I don't think it's any government's place to hold people accountable.
Right.
I think the way it should be is you go, oh, that's how this person actually is. I don't want to be around them anymore.
right, absolutely, yeah.
Because at least then people still fully express their ideas.
Mhm.
And with this cancel culture, it makes it harder to, actually identify a Nazi when you need to.
Yeah.
But whenever the exchange of ideas is open and free, you very quickly find out who you want to continue to be a part of their lives, and vice versa.
Mhm.
So for me, it's a very helpful tool to go through and go, oh, okay, this isn't the person I thought he was. So
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna kind of create some distance. We're gonna do something different here.
Yeah, we're gonna delete them off Facebook.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Brandon, what do you think?
Man,
Well,
I've been hitting that unfollow button a lot
Right.
recently, man, because there were some people that I was really cool with that, if I put anything Black Lives Matter, they were quick to jump on my post and say, well, actually, all lives matter, or he should have just complied, or something like that. And I finally got tired of arguing with people and telling them, like, we're not saying white lives don't matter. We're not saying native lives don't matter. We're saying my life has been targeted, and we're being targeted in the streets, and we need your help.
Mhm.
That's what we're saying. We're not saying, like, oh, forget the white people. That's not at all what it is.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of people just can't seem to grasp that concept, and they just refuse to like look past their little rose-colored glasses and see what else is going on.
Mm. But yeah, no, and I commend you for you know, going after those people because like Zach said, these people you never know, and if these people show their true colors, you need to call them on it because something as important as racism, there's no halfway point.
Yeah,
There's no gray area. It's either you believe someone's inferior to you or you don't. And if you do, then you need to either correct that problem. But if you cannot correct that problem, or you don't see any kind of problem with that, then you just need to get on. Because it's just not healthy, and it's not attractive. It's not a good personality trait. No one's gonna like you. No one thinks you're funny. There's a reason that a lot of people are saying, nah, fuck that. Like you can't like. And and it's evident by the people that are marching, people that are willing to put themselves in harm's way with like riot cops, tear gas, things like that. There is this whole philosophy and movement behind it because you recognize and Zach recognizes that there is an issue at hand. There's an issue at hand, and these people are being murdered. They're being attacked. George Floyd called out for his mother, his deceased mother, which was heart wrenching. And I haven't watched the whole video. I just can't do it. It's just too sad. And but whatever he did, there was four people. He was restrained. He's on the ground. He's not the fucking Hulk. He's not going to rip his handcuffs off and come at you. You have that situation handled. And then you take this other power into your own hands, and then now a man's life is gone because, you just can't contain yourself, or maybe it's poor training, whatever. The end result is someone died. And it's, and the fact that people can't even recognize that is very just troubling.
I don't want to say his name, but there's one guy that I thought was a really stand-up guy. And, I said something about George Floyd, and the first thing he said was, yeah, but rioting and looting is not the answer. I'm like, that has nothing to do with what I said.
Yeah.
I'm like, the cops murdered this guy on video in cold blood, and you want to talk about them looting a Target, a multi-billion-dollar company that is going to be okay.
Which, by the way, Target put out a social media release, and they said that Target loves Minnesota.
Yeah. So I mean, like, it is what it is. But and every time I said anything, he just rioting and looting. And when we did the protest in Ardmore, somebody said there was going to be a protest, and the first thing he put on Facebook was, "Well, better load my guns up tonight."
Yeah.
Like who does that help?
No one's kicking in your door and making your Dale Earnhardt plate collection. It's not happening. So I've seen this pattern play over and over and over. Colin Kaepernick wanted to talk about this, but there was a huge distraction in the background because it was affiliated with the national anthem and the flag.
Yep.
And whenever people see something like that, it's very easy for them to get distracted and go, oh, well, this is what it's actually about. I saw on Facebook, this is the way it is. And the same thing is unfolding here. We have a legitimate conversation that needs to be had. And the only thing that people want to focus on is the looting and the rioting. Now, I don't think that it's doing the movement any good because it is a distraction. I don't think it's doing any good for those business owners who are being hurt. However, whenever you have a distraction like that can pull eyes away from the actual message, it is so hard to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish.
And see, and that's another thing. In Minnesota, my sisters live 10 miles away from where the riots were happening. They lived 5 miles away from the cop who did it. And my sister told me, she said, it's not the protesters. The protesters are protesting.
Yeah.
the people looting and rioting, they're coming behind the protesters and doing this.
Mhm.
This is like the Black Lives Matter movement. It's like it's very much trying to be hijacked, and people are coming from like out of town trying to profit. And I think it was a police chief in Baltimore that actually came out and said like everybody we've arrested for looting was from out of town. They were here to profit to get something. Like we didn't arrest any protesters. All we arrested was out of towners. So it's if something like that happens, it's not the people that are actually protesting. It's people coming behind, people coming separately just to tear stuff up.
You're absolutely
That
right.
just want to cause chaos.
Yeah, and the problem is that those people who have absolutely nothing to do with this movement are distracting, and they are
Exactly.
taking focus away from the conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah.
And there's a small subsect of the population that will riot over anything. You know, the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. Hey, we're in a riot.
Yeah.
We're going to destroy Philadelphia just because we can. You know, Jerry Sandusky was fired from Penn State. Hey, we're going to riot. We don't know anybody who was ever affected by this situation.
Yeah.
I've never met these people, but here's an opportunistic moment for me where I can make a little bit of money.
Yeah. Just like what's his name said on Batman. Some people just want to watch the world burn. And sadly, those are the people that are getting all the attention right now instead of the correct people.
Mhm.
So,
That's one thing that I want to see happen with this movement is a captain of the ship,
yeah.
a unified voice that comes forward and steers this all in the right direction. And it may be by design. It may be by design because there's not the perfect person. There's not a Malcolm X. There's not a Martin Luther King Jr. right now who is beyond reproach that can lead this without people digging into the weeds to go, oh, well, he was actually mean to his sister when he was a kid, and he cut class, and he tried pot when he was 18. Look, that cancel culture lies on every side, and if they can pick away at that veneer of, this is the person, we're trying to follow. If they can pick away at that and find one flaw, they're going to exploit it.
Another thing that's really been bugging me is it's like the willful ignorance.
Yeah.
Like you have all these tools at your fingertips to learn, and you choose not to. I'm like, you can look and see, yes, white men are killed more by police, but there's marginally more white men.
Yes.
If we're looking at the amount of black men in America compared to the amount of black men police kill, it's exponentially higher by a lot, by several exponents.
Hmm.
I don't know how many, but a bunch of them.
A lot of
So
exponents.
yeah, there's a bunch of them.
An assload of exponents.
Yes, I mean I wouldn't go say a butt ton. We'll call it a butt ton.
Okay, butt ton.
That's more my
Slightly more
speed.
than an ass load.
Yeah, there you go. But no, man, like I get what you're saying. It's for me, like it's easy because it's like you recognize someone, a disadvantaged group of people, and these people, they need our help, they need our understanding. We need to have a conversation where you sit down and we can have a conversation like we're having. You can have a conversation. I can have a conversation with my friend who is who's into Trump. We can sit down, we can agree on a lot of things. And, kind of what Zach had said is, you need that kind of central figure who can talk to these people, who can say, hey, this is what we think. This is our voice. This is our opinions on something. And, until that happens, I'm just not sure, and I think as we record this tonight, there is President Trump, he's having a rally in Tulsa, and I have a lot of family in Tulsa, and I worry because whether it's the counter protesters, the rioters, the looters, the Trump supporters, whoever, to me, it doesn't matter. I just worry that somebody is going to, one of my family members is going to get hurt, in the process. And it's very scary, honestly.
And I was thinking while Zach was talking about we do need a figurehead for the movement. Definitely. But I'm just gonna put this out there now. I don't want Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson. Both of them are out. like almost anybody else, just not those two.
I love the way that Killer Mike just
Yeah,
took
Killer Mike was
command
amazing.
of Atlanta. I mean, he
Yeah.
absolutely took control of that and said, "Do not burn your own house.
Yeah.
This is the time to fortify our house, and this is the time to gear up for a fight that's coming." And I think it takes someone who the movement respects, the community respects, the population respects, that can also articulate, what they're trying to accomplish in the first place. Because right now it's so fragmented that the demands of people in Ardmore are very different from the demands of people in Seattle. The people in Ardmore did not barricade off 6 city blocks and take command of City Hall. No one knows exactly why. It's not been articulated, at least not on a nationwide basis. So that's what I mean by, this desperately needs leadership if we want to see actual change come from it.
But then you got to be careful with Killer Mike though, because he is quick to say, "Kill your masters."
He was wearing a T-shirt that said "Kill your masters" as he was at the press conference.
I absolutely love Killer Mike. I love his music. I love everything about Killer Mike. And if he was leader of the movement, I'm down. But that "kill your masters" thing scares me a little bit. 'Cause, like, man, that's kind of a slippery slope. But I see a lot of people like they'll post Candace Owens videos, and they're like, "Oh, see, she's black." I was like, "Well, not really." I'm like, "She's black in color, but not in spirit or soul." Like she probably grew up in a good neighborhood. Like you can just tell.
Yeah.
And she just makes me sick because it's like she's always so quick to put black people down, but white people are so much better. Like she's so quick to jump on the white people are great train. No offense, I don't mean that to be.
No.
I hope you understand where I'm coming from. But
they're not your opinion.
Yeah,
we're describing the actions of another person.
She's just
Zach is black at heart. So.
Yeah. I can tell by the curl in his hair. Oh man!
But I mean, like for you, Brandon, and you were talking, and I had a question that popped in my head. What does black culture? What does it mean to be black to you?
That's tough. Nobody's really asked me that before, but to me, being black would be like having a very strong sense of like family, like togetherness. And I think honestly, a lot of black people have kind of gotten away from that with honestly with a lot of this hoe culture and stuff that like Cardi B and Nicki Minaj and people like that, Meg Thee Stallion have popularized. And I hate to say that because a lot of people love those women, but they popularized the hoe culture, and then a lot of these rappers have popularized a baby daddy culture, and that's so toxic to the black family profile. And so a lot of black families are growing. There's a lot of black boys out here with no dad, boys that don't know their father and boys that don't know their mother either. So I think it's what it should be is just a strong sense of family. That's a good question. I'm gonna have to go really do some soul searching on that one, Jesse. That's tough, man.
I think I forgot the question that I asked you, but last podcast I asked you another question. You said no one's ever asked me that before.
Yeah.
So that's all right. Well, it's online, so somebody can research it. But no, like I get what you're saying. It's I think as being a Native American, well, being a Choctaw, being Kiowa, is that they're that's procreated because people want that kind of romanticized version of a Native American. They think because I have dark skin, that I need to go out and run with the wolves or talk to the Pocahontas type of stuff, and it's really kind of weird. I'll say that because growing up, I would have people that would say, "Man, I bet you can drink a lot." Because you're Indian, or they'll say like, "Yeah, man, like I just killed a bottle of of vodka must be that Indian in me,
Yeah,
or they'll say something racist, and they'll say, no, it's cool, I'm Indian too,
yeah.
but
My best
it's
friend's in here.
or they'll say, no, like it's okay, we're the same. Well, not really, because people who look, and I'm just going to be frank, who look white, or people who look another race.
Mhm.
There's some advantages that you're going to have. Now, if someone who is fair skinned, they can go certain places, they can do certain things that I just can't of someone being darker skinned. That's one of the things where you call somebody on their racism, and because it's so ingrained in Oklahoma culture, because it's so ingrained in United States culture, because Native Americans or American Indians, they're a forgotten group in a lot of places. People just brush over it, or they'll say, "Well, no, like I watched this movie and that's what they said in there," or "No, it's cool, brother. Like I got a dream catcher on my wall." So it's really weird.
I think in Oklahoma specifically, we're a little more aware of this than anyone else in the United States because we have such a dense Native American population. Um, but what a lot of people don't grasp is, Native Americans weren't given the ability to vote until after African Americans were in this country.
Hmm.
I mean, so it only because it's more kind of regional, and I don't really want to say that there are natives all over the United States, but there are larger populations in places like Oklahoma, Arizona, places like that. So it's a little more kind of in front of your face.
Hmm.
It's a little more obvious, um, and I mean, you do hear it all the time.
Hmm.
People make comments whenever they see a Native American in a liquor store or a bar or whatever. But I mean, we're talking about two marginalized groups here, Native Americans and African Americans, that you know kind of if you're looking at this like a race, okay, you guys started in the parking lot. You didn't even get into the stadium before the gun went off. That's what we're talking about whenever someone uses the word like white privilege. A lot of people scoff at that and they go, well, I didn't have a privileged life. I grew up in a trailer park and my dad beat the shit out of me and my mom was never there. That's not privilege. And I get that. But at the same time, things weren't made more difficult in your life simply based on your appearance.
Hmm.
And I think that, whenever if my people would ever just stop and listen and think instead of always trying to be right, instead of always trying to not be on the wrong side of this, and I think if people would just analyze that idea of was your life in any way, shape, or form hindered? Were your opportunities hindered based on your appearance? That's what my understanding of white privilege is. That's the way that I look at it. And it's real because my life has never been that. I've never been harassed by law enforcement. I've never had, these stereotypes placed on me. And I grew up as the son of a police officer, and I grew up as the grandson of a police officer. So, I mean, my childhood looks very different. So that's why whenever I hear people talking about their experiences, I kind of shut up and listen, which I think most all of us could benefit from, just listening rather than trying to defend ourselves. Because if you're waiting for your opportunity to speak, you're not listening. And my man Brandon over here posted something on Facebook that just gave me pause a while back, and it was like, try to find one picture of a white person being hanged by a group of black people, and he said you won't find it, but here are 10 images of black people being hanged by white groups of people. So, I mean, we just have to be willing to accept that our lives and our upbringings look very different for a number of different reasons. But just because my experience doesn't line up with what Brandon's life experience is, that doesn't mean that his life experience is less, less worth examining and less worth, hearing about and fixing, if we're being honest, just fixing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, man. It's very poignant.
Yeah.
I couldn't really.
That's tough.
Yeah, man, preach,
listen,
brother.
We're here cutting onions.
No, but I mean, yeah, and it's.
And that's
Well,
one thing I found is like most people just listen to argue. Like they're not listening to hear, they're not listening to understand, they're just listening to make their next argument. And that's exactly what Zach said. And it's so frustrating dealing with those people.
well, and they're the same people that are, if on the door it says, please wear a mask, they're going to say, I don't have to wear no mask.
Yeah, this is America.
This is America.
Those peaceful protesters that showed up and screamed in cops' faces with fully automatic weapons over their shoulders because they did not want to have to be made to wear a mask. Not anything was said about them. Not anything was said about, them being disrespectful to law enforcement or, them, costing the city money because of extra security and, the things that they destroyed. People don't talk about that.
And that is white privilege, people. Like white privilege isn't about your stuff and what you've had and your earning power. Right? White privilege is about the safety that your skin color gives you. That's what we mean when we say white privilege.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with how much money your parents made or anything like that, how much money you make. It's about the safety.
Right. No, and this to kind of tack on is it's very unfortunate that a group of people has to say, hey, please listen to me.
Yeah.
Please listen to this is what's going on. Can would you just listen? Can you just listen to me? And you have people that are like, nah, no, because like it's going to make me feel bad.
Yeah.
Or if I think about that, then I'm going to reflect on all those things that maybe I treated someone in a similar light, and that's going to make me feel bad. It's kind of like I had heard a joke where there was a woman reprimanding a gay couple, and she said, how am I going to explain to my son about two men in love? And I think it was Louis C.K. actually, and he said, well, who gives a fuck about that? Like two people are in love, but like you can't talk to your shitty kid for 5 minutes. Like that's gonna that's your issue. Two people can't be who they want to be because you don't want to sit down and have that conversation with your son.
What's really interesting about that is in our lifetime, that was something that was completely illegal in all 50 states.
Mm-hmm.
To not only legal, but we kind of openly celebrated. Our last president changed the color of the lights on the White House to be a rainbow flag in respect of Pride Month.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you look at the growth that this nation has undergone, is it really that much of a stretch to say, hey, let's reform some stuff so that we all get a fair shake at this?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people have a very reactionary response to this. They think that the answer right now is defunding police. Well, if you think things are bad now, wait until they can't afford the good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Wait until the ones who are in there the ones that are coming in are less trained than the ones that are in there now.
Mm-hmm. And
again, I look at this both just through the scope of what's happening today, but also the scope of the child of a police officer. They've got a really tough job. They do. I do not want to be a police officer in the United States right now. I just don't. They're overstressed, they're underpaid, they're undertrained, and there is not enough screening taking place.
Mm-hmm.
So the cream of the crop, the people who we want to be police officers, a lot of times it's not financially worth it for them to go into that field.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Roberts, you would be a great representative and law enforcement officer for this area, but do you really want to get shot at? Do you really want to deal with that stuff?
To be honest with you, it's funny that you asked me that because as a kid, I did low-key always want to be a cop.
Me too.
And right now, I still wouldn't mind being a cop.
Yeah.
Around here, I don't know how the cops would make it on their salaries,
Yeah.
but honestly, I thought about it,
Yeah.
and I'm still thinking about it. It's not too late. I'm only 25. I can still go back and do it, but I'm not opposed to it.
My little brother is interested in going into law enforcement right now. He's a dispatcher for OHP,
Okay.
and he's considering going into law enforcement. And I really do have concerns about that. Um, because like I said, there are good police officers in this world, and if you want less of them, cut funding, cut training.
But, and I understand what you're saying, but one of the biggest things is there's no real community policing. Like the people don't know the officers.
Yeah.
Like back in the day when officers would walk a beat, people knew him, people spoke to him, people saw him, people felt comfortable around him. Now all these cops are so shut up in their cars and they never get out.
Yeah.
People don't know these guys.
Yeah.
So they just see them as basically the enemy, as it's us against them. And to be honest with you, it seems like the cops have that mentality too now. Is it's us against them. And so that they stay shut up in their cars all day and they don't get out and speak to people. And a lot of the cops around here, flat out jerks, man. I've seen them in restaurants or something, and I'll try to speak to them and say, "Hey, what's up?" And they just look at me like, "Why are you talking to me, peasant?" And like, I don't like that. There's very few cops around here that will actually sit and speak with you, and those are the guys I like and I respect. Officer Bryce Woolley, that's my guy. Love that guy. If I see him out in public, I talk to him all the time. Even though he did give me a ticket a few weeks ago, but it was my fault, so I'm not gonna be mad. But it's like the cops don't talk to anybody anymore, and they're just so rude. Like, there's no, if you treat people like, literally, me and my friend were talking about this the other day. If you treat people like human beings, every single problem in the world goes away. If everybody learns to treat people like human beings, every problem in the world goes away.
One of the problems is these two different communities live in very separate realities where they're both on a feedback loop of bad stuff that's happening, all of which is valid and all of which it really exists because Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin. I mean, God, there's such a list, and that's on repeat in your community because that's a legitimate threat. That's your reality. In the law enforcement community, they're on a constant feedback loop of, this trooper was shot and killed, in an opportunistic fashion on a, whatever, or this, I just saw another one this week. There was a black game warden that was shot to death.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because he stopped to help a woman.
Yeah.
That her boyfriend had shot her, and he snuck up behind the game warden and shot him in the back of the head.
Yeah. So
and nobody is condoning that kind of action.
Of course.
That's cowardly. That's a bum move.
Absolutely. So, but the law enforcement community, they live in that feedback loop of, oh, I look at this video, I see this, I see this, I see this, I see this. So they are constantly triggered. They're constantly on, red alert, and the same thing exists in the other community as well. Those interactions need to be more routine. Like you were saying, there needs to be a relationship between those communities.
Exactly.
Because if it is an us versus them, both sides are in danger.
Yeah.
Every time there's
nobody wins that.
Exactly.
But it just frustrates me because last time I was pulled over by a highway patrolman, I don't even remember his name, but the moment he got to my window and saw me, his hand immediately went to his gun, and he unbuckled his pistol and never took his hand off his gun the whole time we were there. And luckily, when he pulled me over, I just pulled out my insurance verification and my license and everything, so I didn't have to reach or anything. So when he walked up, I just had it in my hand, and I held my hands on the wheel the whole time because I saw him. He stood sideways to the door as soon as he saw me. He walked up, I rolled my window down, and instantly you could see his whole posture change. And so that's kind of the thing that we're trying to get away from. And these cops, like I said, community policing is so important. Like you have to be out there. You have to know the people that you're paid to protect and serve. I feel like that's one of the biggest things they could do right now. When we did the protest here, I I bought just a butt ton of bottled water and a bunch of ice and everything, and I was handing out water. Like I set up stations along the route, and I gave out all this bottled water. And every single time, I would offer the cops water. Most of them didn't take it. Some of them did,
Yeah.
and it was good that I really appreciate that they were there with us, and they were really cool. They did a really good job of keeping everybody safe and not letting people drive into the crowds.
Yeah.
And I really do appreciate that aspect of our police force. So shout out to the Ardmore PD for that.
I actually, so one of the hardest conversations I've ever had happened that day. It was my daughter's birthday, and we took her to Academy, let her pick out her bicycle. And we wanted to see the protests. So I'm apprehensive about taking my 5-year-old
Yeah.
because they have the capacity to erupt in violence. So we didn't march, but we saw it, and I did see Ardmore PD kind of doing the right thing and being proactive in protecting you guys. And I had the windows down, and my daughter asked, "Why do they keep saying I can't breathe?" And I said, "Oh God." And I had to explain to her what had happened and why people are saying that and why people are angry and why people are in the streets. And I got choked up in the middle of the conversation, and she was like, "It's okay." And it just kind of dawned on me in that moment, like, if this is going to stop in my lifetime, those moments of discomfort, I didn't watch the George Floyd video for a long time because I didn't want to watch another man die. And then it dawned on me, like, if it's uncomfortable for me to watch, like, this is other people's reality. So I watched it, and I was present in it, and I cried. And I was so disgusted and just sad and hurt by the whole thing. But if we don't absorb that, if we don't deal with it, this doesn't change.
Yeah.
If I'm not honest with my daughter whenever she asks me that question, this is still going to exist whenever she's an adult. She's going to have that conversation to her children. So to anyone who's listening, be present and deal with this, and be honest. Tell the children the truth, in the words of Bob Marley. That's how this is fixed.
Yeah. And see, that's why what Morgan Freeman said just infuriated me. And it's so dangerous what he said, because he said the only way to get rid of racism is to stop talking about it. It's not true at all. And a black man his age should know better, should know that how asinine that sounds. That's how racism continues. That's how it keeps going. That's why I'm fighting the same fight my grandparents fought.
Well, he comes from like a privileged
Yeah.
situation. He's
Yeah.
had money.
Exactly.
He's been famous.
It's just it's ridiculous. And like I said, it's so dangerous because a lot of people are going to hear that and they're going to take that and run with it like, oh, this is what a black man said. He said just ignore it.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do that.
That's why Candace Owens has a career.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
She's what my family have called her so eloquently a coon. So that's but
Well, there's two. Not to interrupt you, but there's two things I just wanted to say real quick.
okay.
So on the way over here, actually, one of the reasons I wasn't here a little bit early, I got pulled over. So I got pulled over because I was speeding, and I see the cop and I'm like, oh fuck. So I try to slow down, and and it's 55 when you're coming into Ardmore. And I was going 70. No, it'd be sometimes. It'd be like that sometimes. So I started slowing down, and I was like, all right, I'm getting pulled over. So of course I passed him. He flicks on his lights. So I just pull over, kill the car, roll down the window, get my license and insurance. And he walks up to the car, and he said, hey, how you doing? And I said, pretty good. I said, yeah. I said, I know I was speeding. I said, he's like, yeah, you saw me? And I said, yeah. He's like, he kind of laughed. And I was like, he's like, so you got your license and everything? So I said, yeah. So I gave it to him and he went back to the car and he came back and he was like, well, hey, man. He's like, I appreciate you being honest with me. He's like, I'm still going to write you a ticket. He's like, but, he's like, he's like, man, he's like, why would you speed if you saw me? And I was like, well, I said, honestly, I said, it's on me. I wasn't paying attention. And he's like, he kind of sighed and he was like, well, man, he's like, you got to be really careful because he's like, if I wasn't here or, something was to happen, he's like, then that's on you. And I said, yeah, no, I understand. And then, so that's like a good interaction. Of course, I've been pulled over before and they've asked me, well, what are you doing out so late? Or where are you going? Or, well, yeah, where you come from? Have you been drinking? There's a lot of parties going out. Are you party hopping? Well, what bars you been to tonight? So it's definitely gone from that from when I was 18, 19 to now as a 30-year-old man. The interactions got better, especially in Ada. And I will say that about them. And you were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement march here in Ardmore. We had one in Ada, and it was put on by the just an extremely talented and thoughtful and articulate set of younger people. These kids are 18. Well, I don't say kids, but these people are 18, 19. And that they've come together and they made this march happen in Ada. And there was like 1,500 people that were in that march, and the Ada police were there with us, and the Ada police chief, I think his name's Chris Allen. I can't remember, so forgive me if I'm messing that up. But he made a point to say, hey, this is an important movement. So they were marching with us, and there were some speeches and just a whole it was really beautiful. And exactly, but there was Indians there was, Mexican, there's white people, there's black people, there's gay people. All these people are coming together for this, for this movement. And and of course, you're going to have those people that are sneering off to the side. People have made jokes and they were making threats. And then there were people that looked like they wanted to say something, but they didn't. You could tell like they had that grimace and they were kind of, doing these awkward face postures, and they wanted to say something, but they never did. And it was really cool to see Ada, Oklahoma really unite and do that for our not only our black community but the black people everywhere. It was really cool.
And another thing that these people don't seem to understand is this isn't. It might be spearheaded by the Black Lives Matter movement, but it's not just for us. Police brutality happens to every race. So if we get reforms in the police departments to make them more accountable for their police brutality actions, that helps everybody of every color.
Mm-hmm.
Black, white, yellow, purple, orange, blue, it doesn't matter. That helps everybody. So if all lives truly mattered, why are you not jumping on board?
Mm-hmm. Black lives are included in all lives.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I understand. A lot of people think that whenever you say something like, a specific group, Black lives specifically matter, we're bringing attention to that because they're not being treated as though they have value, as though they do matter. And whenever, people really hone in on, well, all lives matter, that's true.
Yeah.
But we're focusing on this group right now. We're focusing on this group because there has not been the change that should have been made. I thinking about like how recent this is. In my grandparents' lifetime, it was illegal for people of mixed race to get married. That was against the law. So, it seems like Martin Luther King marched through Selma, 100 years ago. No, there are people alive today that saw that happen on the news. There are people alive today that marched with them. So, because this issue hasn't been remedied, because this issue hasn't been fixed, we're doubling down and saying, yes, Black Lives Matter, and we're going to focus on this group until the statement All Lives Matter is truly applicable.
Yeah, and you mentioned that about Dr. King. I think my dad was 10 or 11 when that happened. So that was, just removed from a lifetime ago. And, and it's, and Brandon, you had made that point about, trying to find a white man lynch, with, and, but you'll find plenty of, black people and people of color, lynch.
Yeah, they used to put it on postcards, man.
Well, even as recently as, within the last few weeks, there were what, 5 or 6
Yeah, yeah.
lynchings. Yeah,
And,
people were lynched. People, black people were lynched.
but they were all suicide.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Black people don't commit suicide. If black people are going to commit suicide, it's not going to be by hanging. That's what scares black people more than anything, is being hanged.
Hmm.
So, like, a black person is not going to go hang themselves. That's just not that's not one of the ways that it's going to happen. They might shoot themselves, they might overdose, but they're not going to hang themselves.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
something I've never considered.
Yeah.
I haven't either. That's really cool.
My grandpa is not scared of anything, but he's scared of being hanged.
Hmm.
Like, that's his worst fear. And if my grandpa's going to commit suicide, I can dang sure tell you it's not going to be by hanging. He's probably going to do it find a way to do it with his lawnmower or something. He loves that lawnmower more than he loves his grandkids.
So yesterday was Juneteenth, and I know that you know we've got leaders in the world right now trying to take credit for it, but you know the Juneteenth celebration is always such a celebration in your community, which is I think awesome to me. But the fact that Juneteenth exists is always kind of made me sad. The fact that 2.5 years later, after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, there were still 250,000 slaves in the state of Texas. Um, that's that's always been so sad to me. That and I know that it's a moment of celebration when the last of the last of us is finally free. But God, 2.5 years, and it was all on a technicality because Texas wasn't part of the Confederacy and didn't think that the Emancipation Proclamation applied to them. So the good guys,
Yeah.
because they weren't Confederacy. But no, we're still going to explode this for another 2.5 years. But I think that whenever you take those types of things into account, I think it's easy to identify why these communities are marginalized. And I think that that's why it takes a proactive approach to this to actually fix it, rather than just ignoring it and letting it fester.
Oh yeah. Very, very well said, gentlemen. So, kind of as we wrap up here, what is? Let me try to find the question as I mess with this mic stand that's falling off. What's one joke that you've told, or what's one moment that you've had in your stand-up where you said it and then like you get that validation? Like what's one can you like a moment of victory? Like you made a joke, you said something, you told a story, and it had a big payoff. Like kind of a highlight.
One of my favorite jokes is I tell this joke about, like, what if Catholicism started in the hood,
Hmm.
and the patron saints would be a lot different. Um, you'd have like Tyrone, patron saint of unpaid Sprint bills, and that one always gets me because it always gets a very mixed reaction, and I love it because, like, you have half the audience that's just in stitches, and then the other half is just like, oh, like they don't really want to laugh,
Yeah.
but they know it's funny, and that's kind of my favorite reaction, is getting that mix in there.
I really enjoy your jaundice joke where or I don't want to butcher it, but
I
so I'll let you tell it. And then,
appreciate that. You want me to start right now?
yeah.
Okay, so I was practicing to be a nurse, but they kicked me out of the program. Trying to treat this lady for jaundice. Turned out she was just Asian. So Making me give my product away for free. That's it.
Yeah,
Just that one.
You tricked me.
You gotta burn it now. It's on the internet.
Yeah, I'll burn it on a CD and then sell those. Give you half profit.
I appreciate
You're welcome. I'll buy you an appetizer later. How's that? Zach, what about you?
Oh, so for me, the biggest payoffs for me are whenever I can take like a counter stance, or I can start talking about something that's very embarrassing or very like self-deprecating or something like that, and to see the look on everyone's face when I start the story,
Mhm.
because we go down some weird turns in,
Mhm.
in my comedy set, and for me, seeing someone absolutely not on board to begin with, and then seeing the inability to keep from laughing at the end of it is just, I mean, that makes it all worth it, you know.
Yeah.
So for me, I I'm trying to. It's been so long since I've done this. I had a joke about Jason Momoa.
Mhm.
Okay, and Cliff Notes version is, a friend of mine met Jason Momoa at a Comic Con, and my first question was not about what was there about like Game of Thrones or to talk about Aquaman or something. The only question I had was, what do you smell like? So it was like, oh, that's kind of gay.
I always like that phrase. It's kind of gay.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit, just the tip. And he goes, oh, he smells good. I said, give me some details. He goes, he smells like bourbon and leather. I said, bourbon and leather? Those are both manly scents all on their own. And I was intrigued. But, a lot of guys, it's a joke. It's an expansion on an idea. But no guy wants to say they're a little gay. Not in Southern Oklahoma.
Yeah.
No one wants to kind of question their own sexuality in any way, shape, or form.
And Denzel walks in here right now, I would.
But that's the thing, is in this area, like exploring the boundaries of your sexuality in your mind. A lot of people can't see themselves doing something. And I'm not saying that I can, but I don't know. I haven't explored that yet.
It's my turn to a completely different podcast.
But
Zach
whenever you start down that road, you see everyone get very uncomfortable,
Right.
specifically the men in the audience. And then by the time you get to the payoff, which is, I found out he smelled like bourbon and leather. So I went home, got drunk on some bourbon, and put on some assless leather chaps, and very delicately placed an Aquaman action figure between my cheeks. So that's not. I don't own an Aquaman action figure. It was a Ken doll, but
yeah, I got lost somewhere.
Right.
Person threw it out.
But for me, like starting that path of an uncomfortable conversation, where every guy in there is like, I don't have these conversations, or is he going to come out in front of me right now? I'm a Baptist. I can't do this. So, like, to see it start that way, and then to see it end with the punchline, and everybody's laughing, and everyone's all that kind of pent up anxiety about what I'm going to say next is relieved because everyone's laughing. For me, that makes it all worth it.
I think for me, like, and I've done like open mic nights, we did our shows and stuff like that. And one thing that people always tend to ask me, they're like, did you really shit yourself at that, when you're working at that place? I'm like, yeah, I really did. And even if it's like through stand up, whatever, people want to know that story. Because it's like, people will tell their friends, whatever. It's like a fucking, I don't know, like some kind of weird rumor or something, like they saw Bigfoot or some shit. Like, did you see Jesse? Ask him about that shit himself story. But no, so when I tell it, it's people have this kind of like shared reaction where they're like, they feel very anxious and very like, oh no, like, And then, so like at the end of the story, when I'm like, yeah, so then I violently shit myself. It's it's almost always people will laugh, or I think one lady said like, oh my god, like, and she was like, and then she said, so why would you tell people that? Isn't that embarrassing for you? And I said, well, it was more embarrassing getting fired for pooping myself than for me to tell you the joke. But like, it's whatever. Like it happened, years ago. So it's just one of those things. And kind of, like you said, the Cliff Notes version is, I grew up Mormon, and we weren't allowed to like, have any kind of fun. And so one of the first times that I ever drank coffee was as an adult man when I was like 28 years old. And I had this really big time job that I was working at, this brand new job. And with this job, it was the best job I ever had. And with this job, I was able to get myself a brand new car. I've never had owned a brand new car before. I was able to take my mom out to dinner. I was able to do all these really nice things and help out like my parents, my family, and stuff like that. And I was really proud of myself. So I thought like, okay, well, I'm going to build. This is the cornerstone of my future. I'm going to build my house on this foundation. And I was wrong. And that's cue to laugh, everybody. No, but so then, one a part of the job was to deliver these container of food. So you load the container of food onto the back of the single bed pickup truck, or single cab rather. Every truck has a bed, but and then you drive it 5-10 minutes away to this place. You exchange out these food containers, and then you bring the full food container back to the facility. You drop it off, and everyone gets to eat and have a good time. So the first time I did that, like I couldn't kick it into second gear, mentally. So a guy that I was working with said, "Hey man, what? There's some coffee in there. Why don't you share some coffee?" I'm like, you know what? Joseph Smith be damned. I'll go and have some coffee. Ooh, yeah. So there's like an ominous ooh. Yeah, right. The Celestial Kingdom? No. But no, but so then I'd be in there with all of Joseph Smith's slaves. So he owned slaves, people. He owned slaves. He did. Anyways, but sorry, black people. Sorry, black people for that. No, so then, so I take the drink of coffee. I'm like, man, stop hitting. So then I chug another one. So it's like 24 ounces of just pure coffee, that like sugar, whatever in it. So then I load up the food container. I drive to the place. As I'm driving there, like I can kind of feel it in my stomach, and I'm like, ooh, man, like when I get back, I need to go and use the restroom, and everything will be Gucci. So then, so I get there, and then I get there. I change out the food containers, and I'm like walking halfway back to the truck, and I'm pushing the food container, and it's probably, I don't know, 30-40 feet from the door to the kitchen. So then midway, it just like hits me where I'm like, all right, it's go time. Like, I need to find somewhere. So I'm like running back and forth in this hall. I'm trying to find a place. I'm opening doors. It's locked. I'm running back and forth. And then I run down the edge of a hallway, and I turn around, and directly behind me, I see a place that says locker room. I'm like, all right, they're bound to have a bathroom in there. So I'm like, halfway running there, and I open the locker room door, and I take one full step in there, and then everything just falls out of me. Like I violently, and I mean violently, poop myself. So I do the walk of shame from the door to the stall, and I'm like, this already happened. So it's like, this is the worst thing that can happen. So then I walk to the stall. I take off my like custom made, custom tailored pants that I was wearing, because mind you, I was wearing a full suit at this time. So I take the pants off, I just step out of the underwear, and I'm like, whatever. So I throw it in the trash can and then skedaddle. Long story short, I got people found out about that because they had cameras in their hallways, and they found out it was me, and they fired me. And they in the HR room, They said, we believe in integrity around here, and obviously you don't, so get fucked. But so I tell that story, then whenever it ends, like, people generally are on board with me, and then there's that one lady that's like, I would never tell that story ever again.
But so people who've never participated in comedy don't recognize that, this is our therapy.
Yeah,
You
sure.
know, this is the way that we explore and deal with these experiences in our heads, and we try to put a smile on it, make people laugh, and tragedy plus time is comedy. So
Mhm.
some of the stuff that I talk about are bad things that have happened, but
Mhm.
if you can find the comedy in that, and you can just polish it and really squeeze it out of that tragedy, then it's very cathartic. And a lot of times, it kind of creates again that uncomfortable situation at first with a big payoff at the end, and that's a dicey thing to do because it's only comedy if it's funny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I've been to a few open mics, which are just slam poetry and people reading the revisions of their suicide letter. Like, it's a form of comedy if someone laughs at it, but no one was laughing at it. Like, you're just sitting there, just like, wow, this is really sad.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those things. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Comedy is the exact opposite of any other sort of recorded art because, whenever a band goes and records an album, they practice it, they polish it, they perfect it, then they go on tour with it after they record it. We don't know if it's funny until we say it in front of a crowd. There's been 100 things that have come to my mind that are like, oh, that is hilarious. Try it on stage, it doesn't land because people don't understand the reference, they don't have the same experience or whatever, I didn't use the right words. So, I mean, every time we go on stage, even the best of the best, there's a chance they'll misfire and say the wrong thing and it won't be funny. And then the next thing you know, Twitter's trying to cancel them.
Good. Absolutely. Well, fellas, you got any closing remarks?
Yes, I do actually.
Okay.
Waffles are bougie, but Waffle House is not.
Dog. Waffle House is the GOAT.
Agreed.
I don't care.
Favorite restaurant.
I took Brandon to the whitest Waffle House
Yes.
in Oklahoma after a comedy show, and he resented me the entire time. He's like, man, these menus ain't even sticky.
Yeah. The ladies were nice. Like, when I felt safe, I knew the food wasn't going to be very good. Like, Waffle House is the only place I don't mind getting stabbed.
I think they had cops in the Waffle
Yeah,
House.
there was
And they were just like, this ain't the right place.
But, we did it anyway.
I went to a Waffle House in Texas, and our waitress was carrying a gun.
I bet the food was good, though.
The food was good. It was greasy and good.
Yeah.
Waitress was strapped, and the eggs Benedict was amazing.
Stay strapped to get clapped. That's the rule.
Well, there you go, everybody. Stay strapped or get clapped. I sounded really white saying that. Stay strapped and get clapped, everybody. No, but I appreciate you guys. Throw your hands up, everybody. No, I appreciate you guys letting me do this again. It's very cool of you guys to sit down and revisit some topics and go over some new ones. It's always a good time.
It's a pleasure.
It is
Yeah.
always a great time.
In the words of Bob Marley, tell the children the truth.
Tell the children the truth. Wu-Tang is for the children.
That's right.
I was legit opening my mouth to say Wu-Tang is for the children.
Oh, shit.
What are the odds?
That's spooky. All right. That's terrifying. Okay, well, everybody, once again, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, Needless Potatoes Podcast everywhere. You can follow us on Spotify, all the good stuff. We're working on getting this video cast sometime soon and working on some merch and some other stuff. So if you have any questions, concerns, comments, please let us know. And if there's anything you didn't like about the show, please let us know that too. Oh, I do have to say, I'm not going to say your name, but to the lady that reached out to me after the first podcast that we did, I apologize. My intention wasn't to make you feel left out or marginalized. A woman sent me a message and she said that some of the stuff I was saying came off sexist. So, I apologize if you took it that way. Wasn't my intention. But anyways, Wu Tang's for the children. Wu Tang. There you go. Bye bye, everybody.